As a reminder, 114 has you looking at two pieces of text, Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, and then you write your very first body paragraph in your raw notebook. Once you've got that written on your blue bookmark, you know to flip it to the back so we can catalog how the activity helps prepare you with the concepts that you're being graded on. Now, 114 helps practice 7 out of the 9 concepts that your definition essay is being graded on. So if you can't see the classroom bookmark where you're at, I'm just going to go ahead and verbally tell you which concepts 113 helped you practice. 114 had you practice the first 3 concepts: strategies of definition, seeing an example of a clear thesis, providing supporting details. It had you practice concepts 5 and 6, so how do you develop the ideas into a supporting paragraph, working on topic sentences. And 114 had you practice concepts 8 and 9, so working with proper diction and working with your conventions or grammar. Once you got that done, you can put the blue bookmark away. You're not going to see it anymore today. And I'm going to have you open up your window to page 74. If you've got a highlighter, definitely pull that out. We're going to be making a lot of highlighting marks today in our test. The activities, you folks know to go ahead and just use that learning target. See what we're going to be practicing today with 115. Once you've pulled that learning target apart, once you've diffused it, this activity is going to have you practice examining and applying transitions and embedded quotes. So I'm sure you're pretty familiar with transitions. That's not going to be anything really new to you. However, the idea of the embedded quote, you might still be working on that. You might still be practicing that concept, so we're going to make sure to definitely hit that today. First thing I'm going to have you do is go ahead and highlight that literary terms box with coherence. Now, coherence has this really fancy jargon to explain what it means. But coherence, truthfully, is just the flow of a paragraph or the flow of an entire essay. And in that first subtitle of this activity, where it says reviewing and extending transitions, it lets you know that coherence happens as a result of transitional words and phrases. The only way that we can make flow really occur in our writing is by utilizing transitions. Without them, our writing can be kind of herky-jerky. Now, right below that, you've got this huge graphic organizer with 6 boxes, and I'm going to have you take a couple of notes on them. So in the first column, all the way to the left, there's going to be a similar note in both the upper and lower box. The transitions that are listed in the left-hand column, these are types of transitions that you would utilize strictly for supporting detail sentences. So when you're providing quotes, you're providing paraphrased examples to prove a point. Those are the kinds of transitions that you want to use. The middle column, that's strictly for commentary. So the top and bottom box for commentary, those just going to be solely for the CM. And the column all the way to the right, comparing and contrasting, that one doesn't really have a set framework, meaning it's only for supporting detail or only for commentary. That one's just kind of as you need it. But the bottom right box, those are transitions to use to make sure that you are including a concluding sentence. Now, what I'm going to ask you folks to do in a moment here is I'm going to have you go ahead and look at each one of those boxes. And what I would like for you to do is highlight 2 transitional phrases per box that you can see yourself using for this essay that's coming up. If you see a newer transitional phrase that maybe you haven't thought of, definitely highlight that. See if you can't do something a little different this round. I personally love the transitional phrase to illustrate instead of for example. For example is really basic. It's something that later elementary years, your 6th grade year, you probably used a lot. In terms of commentaries, I'm a big fan of consequently and thus or thusly. I'm a big fan of those. Give yourself another 20 seconds to look through. I'm going to go ahead and have you focus on page 75. And 75, you're going to do a little bit without me. First, let's go ahead and figure out what it's asking us to actually do. So, Maggie, could you read number 1 for us on the top of page 75?
The following sample paragraph is based on the tale of Mulan, a folklore story from China about a girl, Mulan, who chooses to go to war in place of her ill father. Like the draft and see what transitions could be added.
All right, now, understandably, this draft, those lines of text are really smushed together. So what I'm going to have you do at the bottom of that paragraph, go ahead and write the numbers 1 through 11. Now, I don't expect you to get through all 11 sentences in the time frame that I'm giving you. But I'm going to ask you to partner up with someone. They don't have to be at your table. And I want you to read through this paragraph. And then what I would like is for you to go back to that transitional graphic organizer and pull some really solid phrases that you think could work for certain sentences. I'm going to give you 4 minutes. Do what you can in those 4 minutes with reading and adding transitional phrases. You'll write them where you've been writing those numbers at. All right, go ahead, partner up, and start up transition practice. And I'm curious if anyone here would want to share an example of a transition that they thought would work really well in this paragraph. Okay, well then tell us the sentence that you were looking at. Just read the original sentence aloud for us.
Wait. Oh, I lost my sentence, so I have to transition.
Okay, what sentence was it?
No, I can't find it.
Number-wise, what sentence?
2.
Okay, so number 2, so that's going to be Mulan takes her father's place.
You put that.
Oh no, did we find a different sentence?
Because it was in this case, but...
Okay, so in this case, maybe you were at Mulan has the strength and the nerve?
I think so.
Okay, so in this case, Mulan has strength and nerve to stand up. All right, I dig that. Any other example? What are you thinking of, Joshua?
I don't know what sentence it is, but like a hero in ordinary position finds the chance to persevere and endure in spite of overwhelming obstacles that according to
Oh, I love that. According to Christopher Reeve, a hero is. That's great. All right, folks, let's go ahead and turn the page. And page 76 is where we're going to start gathering some information about embedded quotes. Did you folks do embedded quotes in 7th grade? I have a feeling you probably practiced it, but the term might be new to you. All right, so we're going to be taking some more highlighting notes here. And we're going to go ahead and start reading just the very top, that providing support for a claim. So, Paris, could you read that chunk of text right below that subheading?
Supporting details can be paraphrased or directly quoted, depending on the writer's purpose and embedded effect. Examine the difference between the paraphrase and the embedded quotation.
Okay, so we've got an example of paraphrasing, and then we've got an example of embedded quotation. So now go ahead and just highlight the example of the embedded quotation, just make it stand out. Now, between the two, even if you don't know what embedded quotation means, what's the real glaringly obvious difference between these two sentences? What's an obvious difference you see, Michael?
In the embedded quotation, there is a quote from you.
Yeah, you've got it. In the embedded quotation, there's an actual quote from the film with those quotation marks. Okay? Now, paraphrasing is in your own words, but embedded quote is when you're borrowing someone else's work. So what we're going to do next is talk about what a direct quotation should do and what it should not do. So what I'm going to have you folks do is just follow the highlighting cues that you see show up on the screen. So the first thing we're going to look at is the negatory, all right, what a direct quote should not do. And there's really 3 out of these 4 items that I want you to be aware of. Okay, the first, a direct quote should never be a simple idea that we already know. You want to bring something new to your writing, not something that's common knowledge. Okay, the second, direct quote should not repeat an idea. Yes, it's good to provide multiple examples, but multiple examples of the same thing, yeah, it's not really proving a point very much. Okay, the last thing, direct quotes should never stand alone. We never just plop a quote in the middle of our essay without any kind of information to back it up. All right? So in terms of what a direct quote should do, there's 2 out of these 4 items that I want you to be aware of. The first, the direct quote should always contain a complex idea. Something that gets your readers going, I never thought of that, or I've never heard of that before. And the last one that I want you to know about, a direct quote should always be smoothly embedded. And the way that we do that is we provide a transition and something called a lead-in. So let's take a look at what makes an embedded quote. All right, now right below that chart, you folks have something like this that's on the screen. This is essentially the formula to making an embedded quote. And the formula includes 4 items. Some highlighted marks, just like before. Here's the first. The first thing that you need for an embedded quote is your transition. Now, the reason why it's there, it bridges a link. So an example of a transition, over in the story. The second item you need for an embedded quote is something called the lead-in. All right, now the lead-in's job is to set a context for the information. And there's a quick little blurb I want you to write down about lead-in. It's essentially telling you what has happened before you provide me the quote. So maybe you have to explain the story of the poem a little bit. Maybe you need to explain a portion of someone's life for me to really grasp what in the world the quote is. So here's an example of where the lead-in would fall. It's right after the transition. Okay, the third item for an embedded quote formula is the quote itself. Now, did you see how on the screen I blocked out the last few words in the definition of quote? Go ahead and scratch that out yourself. I didn't like that word choice, that diction that they had, and instead, you'll be writing this. So the quote needs to make sure that it's an idea which will strengthen and support your topic sentence or thesis. And yes, you folks know what a quote is, but I'm still going to have you highlight it. Maybe taking note of the punctuation cues, where the comma is right after the lead-in, followed by the quotation mark, and then the quotation. And the last piece that you need for your formal embedded quote is the citation. And the citation is where you're going to give you the author's last name, you're going to provide the page number, and it's always going to appear at the very end of the quote itself.